Hello, RJ here. Today we're going to be doing an oil change on a 2023 Honda Pilot Elite. Some of the items that you may want to consider having for this particular job: I'm going to be using a 3-ton floor jack. I'll be placing the front wheels on these two wood blocks for a little bit of added elevation. You'll want some 0W20 motor oil, at least 5.8 quarts. Probably a good idea to have some nitrile latex type gloves to prevent any oil and other items getting on your hands. You might also want to consider getting an oil filter tool, and you see here the part number on this. This tool fits this size of oil filter, which is a pretty common oil filter for Honda products, the 15400 PLM A02, and that will make your job a little bit easier in terms of getting the oil filter off and on. I also have below this a torque wrench. That's not required, but most Honda oil filters do have a torque setting on them, and which you can use if you are unsure of how much to hand tighten. You may also want a tool to loosen up the oil filter. Got some shop towels. I've also got a 17mm socket wrench and a ball peen hammer to help break loose the oil drain bolt. Got the oil drain pan along with a funnel to fill the oil. You might be wondering why is the tin foil on the side here. We're going to be using that a little bit later to help direct the oil from the oil filter so it's not dripping all over the control arms and the suspension and the frame on the vehicle. So that's what we've got here. So for jacking up the car, if you want to use the center jack point, it's this piece right here. You'll also notice that I've got the wheels turned maybe halfway, and you may want to do this to give yourself just a little bit more room here on the passenger side. It gives you a little bit more access getting the oil filter out. Before jacking up the vehicle, one safety precaution: probably good to put some wheel chocks. I do have the parking brake on, but we've added a wheel chock here on the back just to ensure that the vehicle is stable. And you can see now the vehicle's elevated a little bit. It's not a lot of lift, but it's just enough to give you a little bit extra space underneath the vehicle. The vehicle's already got pretty good ground clearance, so this just gives you a little bit extra, and in a way that you don't have to have the vehicle up on jacks. All right, the last thing I'm going to do before I get underneath the vehicle is loosen up the oil filler cap just a little bit. That way there's a little bit of air that can get into the engine, and it'll help the flow of the oil out the drain pan. Once you're under the vehicle, you're going to see the oil pan, and it'll say engine oil, and then there's the drain bolt. This is a 17mm drain bolt. This is what you'll want to loosen up and remove the washer on and let the oil drain out. All right, now you're going to want to remove, you can clean the drain bolt, remove the old washer. Got the new washer here from Honda. Put it right on. The owner's manual specifies to tighten this bolt to 30 foot-pounds. All right, so now we've got the oil all drained out. We're going to tighten up the engine oil drain bolt to 30 pound-feet. All right, we got the click right there. All right, we're tight. All right, now you can see clearly where the blue Honda filter, OEM filter is, and why I thought it was important, or at least helpful, to turn the wheel a little bit. This will give you just a little bit more space to reach up on in here. You see the oil filter there just right above the drive shaft. All right, so what you can see here is something that's admittedly not very elegant, but with the tin foil, it'll drip down into the drain bucket. You see I've got the oil filter wrench tool capped on the end, and then just start loosening it. And there you'll see the oil start to drip out. We'll just loosen that up just a little bit more and let it all come out. By the way, Honda does sell a specifically designed tool for this type of oil filter extraction, but it's close to $50, and looks like it's a nice tool, but I think I probably built this tinfoil contraption for 5 cents. So, but again, it is the other tool is very nice, and I'm sure we'll do the job very well. All right, so now we've got the oil filter off. As you can tell, no oil slipped here on the frame or any of the suspension and drive axle components. And we wiped down the edge there on the housing there for the oil filter. You do want to make sure that the oil filter gasket has come off and there's nothing left on there. It's got the next oil filter can get a nice tight seal. All right, so a couple more quick things about the oil filter. Again, here is the part number for the 2023 Honda Pilot. It's got the 3.5 liter V6 engine. One other note, you've seen this from some other YouTubers who specialize in, particularly I guess in Hondas, have advised not opening the oil filter plastic around it from the bottom at the risk of you're wanting to avoid getting any tiny little plastic pieces in the filter housing, which could make their way through the engine, clog any oil jets, ports that help lubricate the engine. So from that standpoint, then they advise opening from the top and just pulling the plastic over the filter down, avoiding any contamination into the opening here of the filter housing. So just another idea to keep in mind. So the other thing that we're going to be doing here as well is putting some oil on the gasket all around the edge. You want to make sure that that is nice and lubricated. The gasket there. I am not going to be putting oil into the filter. Some folks like to do that. And the reason being is that the engine filter sits to the side of the engine. So if you fill this with any oil ahead of time, all you're going to do is spill oil in the area that I just tried to avoid spilling any oil. So, but make sure you at least lubricate the rubber gasket here on the housing. And one last thing about the oil filter. Most of these you can probably hand tighten, but there are torque specs on the side of the filter. You can see here, it does, by a hand turn. That option is 3/4 turn once the gasket seats. Or you can torque to 10 to 14 Newton meters, and 14 Newton meters is about 10.3 pound-feet. All right, so in testing using a torque wrench to install the filter, I've got a relatively short wrench, but I cannot get enough play. So it appears as though in the Pilot, unless you've got a short torque wrench, you'll need to do this one by hand using the 3/4 turn method. So this particular filter does not have any markings on it to help you identify how far a 3/4 turn is. That should be relatively intuitive, but sometimes it can be helpful to have markings on it, such as the oil filter that the S2000 uses. But in this case, I've just taken a marker and marked the top point so that I can get a little bit of a feel for how far roughly a 3/4-ish turn is to make sure it's nice and tight. So next we're going to add the engine oil. Again, this 3.5 liter engine in the 2023 Honda Pilot requires 0W20, and it requires 5.8 quarts with the new filter. All right, 1 5-quart filter down. I'm going to do one more and measure off 0.8 quarts. And I'll go ahead and put that in and top it off. All right, now I've got 5.8 quarts in the engine, and I'm going to turn the engine on, let it run for a few minutes, and then we'll see, make sure there's no leaks, and go from there. All right, well that wraps up doing an oil change on a 2023 Honda Pilot Elite. Of course, if you're attempting any of this yourself, you should consult your owner's manual as well as any shop or service manuals on the maintenance for this vehicle before attempting any of these activities yourself. Best of luck, and thank you for joining me.